The Samsung Galaxy Book5 Pro 360 promises a ton of features on paper. These include a high-resolution AMOLED screen, the latest Intel Core processors, up to 32GB of RAM, and a 16-inch touchscreen that you can turn around to transform it into a large Windows tablet. Even the S Pen is included. However, priced at least $1,700, it's crazy expensive. Is spending that much really worth it? Well, we've tested all features of this laptop extensively, so let's get into it. The new Samsung Galaxy Book5 Pro is an elegant laptop in every way. From the aluminium-covered chassis to the impossibly thin bezels on the front display, it's an absolute sight to behold. Less is more seems to be the name of the game. Aside from a Samsung logo, there's not much to see on the backside. Corners are rounded and cute, but this notebook is anything but that. The Samsung Book5 Pro 360 feels like an edgier MacBook, featuring the same flat surfaces, premium aluminium build, and black backlit keyboard with a huge trackpad. The keyboard keys are squarer than MacBooks, and the edges of the chassis are just a bit sharper and less rounded. The entire design feels very serious and businesslike. We're happy to report that there is no lack of connectivity options. On the left side, we find two USB Type-C Thunderbolt 4 ports and a full-size HDMI port. The right side carries a USB 3.2 Type-A port, a 3.5mm audio output, and a microSD card reader. Something that may come in handy if you don't want to pay Samsung's ludicrous storage upgrade prices. Obviously, a full-size SD card reader would be better for photographers and content creators, but a microSD card reader is still welcome. On the top right side of the keyboard, we find a power button with an inbuilt fingerprint reader that works reliably. The 16-inch 2880 x 1800p AMOLED display here might just justify this laptop's hefty price. Although peak brightness in SDR is only 400 nits and 500 in HDR, we find the dimness of the display to be a non-issue in daily use, even in brightly lit rooms and outdoors. However, if low brightness is a problem for you, you can also check out Lenovo's recent Yoga Pro 9i Aura Edition, which costs about the same and gets up to a whole 1600 nits in HDR. Back to the Samsung, the pixel density is excellent, colors are vibrant and punchy, and the Galaxy Book display supports a whole 120Hz of variable refresh rate. And we haven't even gotten to the best part. Samsung has finally managed to fix our biggest problem with most OLED laptop displays. This display barely reflects light at all, even in the worst conditions. This is all thanks to Samsung's anti-reflective technology, which can also be found on their Galaxy S tablets. The 360 naming in Galaxy Book5 Pro 360 very obviously sets the expectation that this laptop can be used with the screen flipped around. In our testing, it feels great in tablet mode, although the 16-inch screen might be a bit on the large side to hold comfortably for long periods of time. The touchscreen works excellently, and the included S Pen also functions much better than you might expect for a Windows machine. We'll get to the S Pen writing experience later. We have a couple issues with the Galaxy Book5's keyboard. The worst one might be the razor-sharp edge we find on the bottom of the frame where your wrists usually rest when typing. This makes typing on any elevated surface, quite frankly, very uncomfortable. Here's another couple issues. There's plenty of space to be had on a 16-inch frame, but the inclusion of a number pad means that the keyboard still feels slightly cramped to type on. The arrow keys are way too small, and keys feel a bit shallow with little travel distance. It does feel wrong to give this keyboard a bad score, since Samsung has nailed the general typing experience of the keys themselves. The bottom frame of the Book5 is very solid, and the keys have zero wobble and are decently tactile despite being shallow. But the cons here definitely outweigh the pros. Samsung seems to have opted to put the biggest trackpad they can possibly fit on this chassis. It's also off-center. This decision was probably made so that when not using the numpad, the trackpad is actually centered right below the typing area, but still, we find the placement of the trackpad just a little bit awkward. But aside from that, the trackpad responds accurately to input, and the massive size means you'll never run out of space when scrolling. Performance is good on the Galaxy Book5 Pro 360. Currently, the laptop is available with either a Core Ultra 5 or Ultra 7 processor with 16 or 32GB of RAM. Our test model has an Ultra 7 256V with 16GB of on-package RAM. Unfortunately, this means that there's no way for the user to upgrade the RAM by themselves. Besides the RAM limitations, the Core Ultra 7 256V is the perfect chip choice for an ultra-thin and light laptop like the Galaxy Book. With 8 CPU cores and 7 GPU cores, this chipset is sure to breeze through any office task and light productivity test you throw at it. Even better is the mere 37 watts of peak power draw of the 256V, which allows the laptop to run for much longer without thermal throttling. In order to get a better feeling for how this laptop really performs, we put it through a couple different benchmarks to test performance across a wide range of tasks. In Geekbench 6, we see that the Galaxy Book performs almost just as well as the Core Ultra 7 258V equipped Acer Swift 14 AI, being just around 5% slower in CPU and GPU benchmarks. Compared to the older Intel processor found in the Microsoft Surface Pro 9 and 10, performance is significantly better. The Galaxy Book outperforms the Core i5-135U in the Surface Pro 10 by a whole 65%, despite the two laptops having processors which released only 1 year apart. The performance is also significantly better than the Qualcomm X Elite-based Surface Pro 11. Let's test the GPU some more. In 3D Mark, the Acer Swift 14 AI leads the Galaxy Book by only around 10%. Realistically, you should notice a massive difference between the performance of either chips in graphically demanding tasks. Something we did notice about the Galaxy Book is that the fan curve seems to be tuned pretty conservatively. The laptop stays silent most of the time, but during multitasking and gaming, however, the fans only start spinning when the chassis becomes super hot to the touch. We found this pretty infuriating, and there doesn't seem to be an easy way to change this. The chip also starts throttling after the chassis warms up enough. Gaming FPS seems to drop after around 10 minutes of use, unfortunately. One big selling point of the Book 5 Pro is that it's a Windows laptop that supports a pen and works as a tablet. This makes it ideal for Photoshop. The Galaxy Book has no issues in Photoshop whatsoever. We imported large raw images for editing, and performance seems to be alright. It's only when we add a lot more layers and filters to the original file where the laptop starts to become sluggish, since even 16GB of RAM tends to fill up pretty quickly. Drawing with the S Pen in Photoshop feels snappy, and functions like palm rejection still work well. Overall, using the Galaxy Book5 360 primarily as a productivity laptop should be a great experience. Although the 32GB RAM configurations might be better suited for the task. Honestly, you shouldn't buy this laptop if you're a gamer. Much more powerful gaming laptops with a discrete GPU and no touchscreen can be found for cheaper. However, doing light gaming on the side is still possible. We tested Counter-Strike 2, Fortnite, and Marvel Rivals, and a couple other games. One thing we noticed is that the HDR-compatible 120Hz OLED display really elevates video game graphics to a whole new level. However, hitting that 120Hz refresh rate limit seems to be a bit too challenging for this device, at least in some titles. Counter-Strike 2 is able to hit 120 FPS with low settings, and League of Legends has no trouble running on this laptop whatsoever. However, we were surprised at how badly Marvel Rivals performs here. On very low settings, with ultra performance upscaling enabled, we only get an average of 70 frames per second. The game also looks terrible with these settings. So, for the sake of your eyes, and for the sake of the laptop, demanding games should probably be avoided. But lightweight games like Risk of Rain 2, Minecraft, or Civilizations run great. Battery drain is also not too bad during gaming, so all around, it's an okay experience. And speaking of battery life, the Galaxy Book5 Pro 360 has incredibly long battery life, lasting a whole 15 hours in continuous HD YouTube video playback. It's the highest score received by any laptop in our testing so far. Alongside a 76 watt-hour battery with 65 watts charging speed, we also get an OLED display and Intel's efficiency-focused chipset, which all contribute to this excellent score. In real-world use, we are able to go 2 days without a charge on average, when the laptop is only used for light office tasks, video streaming, and light browser gaming. Compared to our Lenovo X13 2-in-1 with an older Intel processor, the difference is night and day. The most compelling argument for this laptop, at least in our opinion, is the support for Samsung's excellent S Pen ecosystem. Samsung sends you an included standard S Pen alongside with the notebook itself. We can happily report that the S Pen works just as well on Windows as on Samsung's Android tablets. The writing and drawing experience are smooth and satisfying, palm detection works great, and the gorgeous screen feels perfect for writing. Additionally, we get Samsung's note-taking app, Samsung Notes. Samsung Notes is basically a simplified and improved Microsoft OneNote, and OneNote syncing is also supported. So, if you need a Windows laptop with a pen for digital art or Photoshop, and the Samsung Book5 360 fits your budget, definitely consider it. The Microsoft Surface 11 is a solid alternative, but it has its own issues as well. The Galaxy Notebook's speakers fire straight down from the bottom of the chassis, ensuring that sounds are cramped and muddy and there is no bass whatsoever. The smaller 13-inch Surface Pro 11 manages to not only get much louder than the Galaxy Book, but also actually sounds good at the same time. Thankfully, this laptop has a 3.5mm audio output to connect your own earphones or speaker to, sparing you from the laptop's audio quality. Now in tent mode, with the screen flipped over, the speakers do sound okay. The 1080p webcam found on this laptop is not good. With perfect lighting and a bit of luck, video calls might look halfway decent, but it's still not great. Again, Microsoft's Surface Pro 11 completely wins the webcam competition. We noticed that the webcam quality drops significantly when the subject is not lit, or not well lit, to the point that it's not really usable in calls if you're in a dim room, which is definitely a letdown when better cameras can be found in much cheaper laptops. Objectively, this is a good laptop. It's got a great display, an excellent pen, very long battery life, and an elegant design. It's also great for consuming media. But at a minimum cost of $1,700, it's hard to excuse otherwise small issues like the subpar keyboard, webcam, and speakers when the asking price is so incredibly high. For people who don't need a touchscreen on their laptop, the somewhat similar looking MacBook Air M3 is a more reasonably priced option that also performs better. And if you do need a touchscreen, the Microsoft Surface Pro 11 is another valid choice that doesn't cut as many corners, but might end up costing more because of accessory pricing. Realistically, most buyers who don't need to edit photos or draw in Photoshop should much rather look into getting a cheaper laptop and a separate Android tablet. Photographers and designers, however, might find a lot of advantages in the Book 5 Pro 360.